Just out of college and newly married, I moved with my young wife here to the idyllic Yorkshire Dales back in the 1980s to take up my first job as a teacher. I was enthusiastic, self-assured, but greener than a Wharfdale meadow as I entered a fiercely traditional village school. A culture clash was inevitable. All Teachers Great and Small is the story of what happened. It's about trying to change the world from the back of beyond and facing forbidding colleagues, eccentric children and bluff farmers while doing so. It's also about buying a tumble-down cottage which really did tumble down, and about becoming part of a tight-knit, old-fashioned farming community. The book is unashamedly nostalgic, harking back to a decade when time stood still and nothing changed in this rural haven. Let me take you on a tour now of some of the places in the story. This is the tiny village where we came when we first moved to Swinnerdale, as I call this valley. We lived in a half-finished holiday cottage temporarily down the road, and over there is the phone box where I called my wife Barbara, who was in Germany at the time, to ask her if we should buy a house which I'd found, which she'd never seen, and which we couldn't afford. We did buy the house, and behind me is the village where we lived. In the book I call it Appleset. The house is on the edge of the village green, and it was called Craven Bottoms. In many ways it was calamitous. I recall the kitchen ceiling falling on my head, and my setting fire to the place, trying to eradicate the mice who lived in the chimney. A few miles over there is Cragthwaite, with its village school where I taught, and where I met a host of memorable characters, including Isaac, who wrote upside down, Posh Hugh, whose house had 17 bedrooms, George, who stuck a pin in a dinner lady, and Anita, who inexplicably drank a cup of sewage. Oh, and the head teacher who kept a gun in her office. Then beyond is where I took my class of 8 and 9-year-olds on some unforgettable visits, and where we saw killer caterpillars, a flying octopus, and the ghost of a boy, amongst other strange things. This is the scene of a most peculiar incident which happened one night as I returned home across the green following a darts match. It featured Sam Burnsall, who was 90 years old, and who lived at the top of the village, and who drove down to the pub every night, even though it was only 300 yards away. After several whiskies, Sam would return back, driving slowly up the road with no lights on. On this particular occasion, he had somehow run over my neighbour, Major Asquith, which was all the more strange considering that Sam only ever drove at 4 miles per hour. Sam had got out of the car because he could hear a voice swearing and telling him to back off. In the dark he was unable to see the Major, who was pinned under the front wheels, and Sam was further confused by finding the Major's dog, whose lead he had admirably held onto throughout the incident. As I approached, I somehow managed to persuade Sam to reverse the car, and the Major stood up, dusted himself off, and walked away with great military bearing. It could only happen here. This is the tranquil Buttergill Beck, which flows down from a beautiful hidden valley behind the village. It was here, after several days of rain and snow, that the river turned into a raging torrent. It flooded the only road in and out of the village, and Appleset was cut off as a great lake formed here. But local farmers saved the day by ferrying trapped people back and forth using tractors. This is my favourite spot in the village, Appleset Force as I call it. I used to spend hours here with my children, skimming stones, paddling and building dams. It was here that we discovered a most peculiar optical effect, that if you stared into the centre of the waterfall for 1 minute, then looked at the rocks, something really strange happened. What was it? You'll have to read the book or come here to find out. If you like James Herriot, Gervase Finn, or a funny, heartwarming memoir, you'll like All Teachers Great and Small.